All right. So remember with the clone stamp tool, you guys want to have a photo taken of a person. So it's going to be a portrait. And ideally, there are going to be some imperfections. So you'll be able to edit out those, blemishes. This girl's got some kind of like pimples and some weird spots on her cheek, and she's also got a nose ring we can use to like edit that out. Okay. So the most important thing that we're going to do before we do any retouching, we're going to look at the layers palette. So we practiced with the layers palette a bit the other day when we did the kaleidoscope picture. So this will give you an opportunity to do a little bit more work with the layers palette. We're going to double click to unlock that background layer. Okay. Now that's going to let me make a copy of it. I want to actually duplicate this layer. So you guys know how to do that already. You're just going to drag that layer into the new layer icon. So basically I have two identical copies right on top of each other. All right. So right now it doesn't really look like anything. When you're editing, especially something like faces, it's very easy to go too far with your edits and make it look worse when you're trying to make it look better, right? You want the retouching to be as natural and as kind of not noticeable as you can. So the best tip for this is to duplicate the layer. So all the work that you're doing is going to be on the top and the original is going to be below. That will give you the opportunity, once we start changing the first layer, to go back and forth between the kind of original and the retouching to make sure that our work does not look strange or kind of unnatural or kind of alien-like, okay? All right, so let's grab our clone stamp tool. So I'm in Pixlr. Photoshop is going to look very similar. The clone stamp looks like an old-fashioned like rubber stamp, okay? And basically that's sort of what it's doing. It sounds just like its name. It's cloning part of your image and basically stamping that on top of another part of the picture. So this is going to help us pick up good looking skin tone from one area and kind of paint it on top of an area that has a blemish or something unsightly that we don't want to see, okay? Remember, when we change the tools, we have different options that show up in the tool options bar. So the clone stamp works by kind of a brush shape. So you can change the size and type of the brush. You always want to use a brush that kind of has a feathered edge or a fuzzy edge. That will also help what you're doing kind of blend into each other. And I'll show you kind of what you would not want to do as well. So I'll show you what would happen if you had a really hard edge brush. So the brushes here in Pixlr on the second row have that nice kind of fuzzy edge, and you can change them based on size. You can see that's like a pretty small. If I wanted to go a little bit bigger, it shows you how large the brush is when you move it off the thing, okay? The other thing that you can change is the opacity. So you can make your kind of cloning cover up completely at 100%, or you can dial it back a little bit. So it might be good to kind of show the opacity or bump it down a little bit, maybe like 50–60%. That way you're not going to totally obscure the texture and tone of the skin underneath, okay? And again, I'll show you what happens when you maybe don't use this, okay? Now, before I do anything, I really want to zoom in. It's going to be hard for me to retouch if I'm kind of looking from a distance. So I can use my zoom tool, which is down at the bottom. And with this, you can just click to zoom in, or you can like click and drag, and it will zoom in significantly, okay? You can also use the navigator palette to zoom in or to reposition what you're looking at in the window. Okay, so you really do need to get very close to what you're doing to be able to see accurately. Okay, I'm going to switch back to my clone stamp tool, and now I can see my brush is a little on the big side, so I'm going to go maybe down to a size 50. Okay, and that's kind of a good size to cover up these blemishes. So what I want to do, the clone stamp works with kind of a two-step procedure. You've got to tell the computer where you want to pull the pixels from. Once you've sampled that area, then you're going to paint with them, okay? And if you forget this, when you try to click, it's going to tell you like, oops, you forgot to do the first step. It says you have to define a source point. So you have to control click, all right? So you're going to hold the control button and click. So I'm going to try to cover up. Good afternoon. Hi. I sure can. Looks like you're leaving earlier. I'm going to post this on Classroom so you can check it there. Okay. So I'm going to try to cover up this pimple here, and I'm going to find a patch of skin that looks clear and looks about the same tone. So that would be like up here, looks pretty good. So I'm going to control click. Hold on. Okay. On the Mac, it's actually Command that you're using. But if you're on your Chromebook, it's Control. So once I've picked that part of the skin, now I can kind of paint with my brush. And you can see how I'm pulling pixels from where that little crosshair is and covering them up. And now that pimple's pretty much gone. So now I can zoom in again, and now I'll work on this area. Now I probably don't want to keep sampling from up here because it's a bit warmer. The color's not quite as matched. So maybe I want to pick from over here. So again, I'm going to define that new source point, and now I'm just going to kind of paint and cover it up. And because I'm not using 100% opacity, I might want to do it a couple times so I can keep redefining different areas and then lightly painting over on top. She's got a little black head there. Maybe I want to grab a patch of skin. Oh, that was a little dark. Do you see how now that made kind of a shadow? So you can use your history palette to step back through time, which will be really handy. So if you make a mistake, you can kind of use that to kind of help you. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom out and kind of check my work, see how it looks, right? A lot better. But again, remember, we have the original underneath. So by turning off this little check mark, I can hide this layer temporarily and see the original and turn on my work. And I'm like, yeah, looks pretty good. I did not bad right there, right? So now let's go up to the cheek, and I'll kind of show you some of like what you would not want to do. All right, so things to avoid. Remember I said use a fuzzy edge brush. If you used a hard edge brush and you use like a full opacity, watch what will happen. Okay, so I have a round brush that has really hard edge, and I'm using 100% opacity. So if I want to select from up here, I define the source point, and then I paint on top. That's not what we want to do, right? It looks like I literally cut a circle out of her face and put it there. Not very natural looking, right? You can see if I hide that, it looked way better before. Now it just looks like she's got a circle on her, like a Band-Aid or something on her face. So I can go back, and again, always using a fuzzy brush, maybe even something a little smaller, and changing the opacity to something in the like 50-60 range. That way it's not going to totally hide what's there. It's just going to kind of camouflage it a little bit. And you want to go slowly. Less is more, right? So little bits. If you overwork it, right, that's not going to look very good either. So sometimes it's good to kind of get some of the wrinkles out. Oh, so I'm sampling from her hair, so that's not good. I'll resample. I'll sample from down here, get some of that pink tone back. Oh, let's try to fix that. And then, you know, it's very easy to like totally get carried away. And you can see the more and more and more I paint this, the less this is actually looking like skin. And it's looking kind of strange and blotchy and kind of like flat and weird. Okay, the tones are all messed up. She looks like she has kind of a divot in her cheek right there. So again, going on and off to see the work that you did versus the original will kind of tell you if you're on point or if you've gone too far. Okay, so you want to be really careful to not overdo the retouching. Less is more. Okay, make sense? Yes? The clone stamp is just a fun tool. It is a really powerful tool that you can use. You know, it's really useful if you wanted to do some like crazy transformations too. Like if I wanted to make her have a third eye on her forehead, you know, I could just sample that part of the drawing that I want, or that part of the photo, and kind of paint in another eye. I could give her two mouths, right? So the clone stamp might be a useful tool that you want to use for part of your part 3 assignment. Obviously, we want to see something more thought out than just a picture that has like a bunch of faces and eyes on it. You know, use a tutorial, but the clone stamp tool will be a pretty popular tool, and it's a good one to know. Okay, so any questions on that?